Greetings! Today I'm going to be giving you some instruction on engineering clarity in your paragraphs and sentences. So let's get started. So first of all, what are we talking about when we're talking about clarity? Clarity and cohesion are two topics or two elements in writing and communications that go hand in hand. And the idea is that you are creating a logical pattern that allows your reader or listener to anticipate what's coming next. And then you are following through on that logical pattern by supplying the reader or the listener with something that has been expected. And this creates a kind of logical counterpoint that makes what you're saying or writing easier to comprehend. So first of all, we'll talk about creating paragraphs that are coherent, that cohere or have unity, that stick together. We'll talk about some of the elements that create that coherent characteristic of a paragraph, including a focus, an organizational pattern, and following through on the claim that you make at the beginning of the paragraph. Then we'll talk about coherent flow from sentence to sentence at the sentence level within the paragraph. In particular, we'll talk about known information or supplying your reader or listener with information that he or she is familiar with. How to approach supplying your audience with new information, how to introduce new information. And it really, the strategy for introducing new information really rests in connecting the known with the new. So we'll talk about that. Oops. Okay. So first of all, we'll talk about focus. Here I've supplied you with an example paragraph, and this is actually from our power supply block example in our block description for ECE 442 senior design course. And so first I want to talk about how focus is created in this paragraph. Normally when we talk about focus, we're talking about a topic sentence. Okay, we're talking about a topic, but we're also talking about what about the topic. So you could think of it as two questions, what and what about it, or what does it do? So a kind of verb that goes with that topic subject. Here we have the topic sentence in a very logical place, as it usually is at the first sentence of the paragraph. And it says, I'll just read it to you. The display translates the digital signals from the system controller into the pattern of lights required by the system. So this sentence is going to set up an expectation for your reader, for the reader, about what the rest of this paragraph is going to say and what content is going to be included in the paragraph. It's setting up a claim. It is a descriptive claim. So it's not necessarily an argumentative claim, but there is a claim being made here about what the display does. Okay. So in order to follow up then on that claim, there is an organizational pattern. And then the organizational pattern is used to create that follow through. So we'll talk about both at the same time. The next sentence starts off, it must be capable. So what's being said in this sentence is something regarding that display and the description of the display. What the display must be able to do in order to translate the digital signals from the system controller into the pattern of lights required by the system. Okay, in order to do this, it has to do this. So the relationship there is one of subordinates, or the organizational pattern is this coming underneath the general heading of this first sentence. Okay, what about the second sentence? Figure 1 shows the black box diagram. Once again, we're getting more description of the block, more description of the display block. There isn't any new description added here, no additional information about how the display translates the digital signals from the system controller into the pattern of lights required by the system. But we are getting some adjacent or parallel, sort of external reference to a figure that's going to help us understand exactly the same function. Next, we move on to the block is powered from, so we're talking now about how the block is powered. Again, this is subordinate to the display translating this digital signals. The block has to be powered, so this point is subordinate to the topic sentence, to the main claim. So it belongs there in the paragraph. It is coherent with the main claim. Okay. In this next sentence, we're talking about communications to set the lighting pattern. So it's a new aspect of what needs to happen in the block, but referring again to the lighting pattern. So we're still talking about something that needs to happen for that main claim to be fulfilled. And then the output, same thing. The output expression of the output also fulfills that main claim. It describes how the block functions. And in addition, the user experience. So we're just going through all of these. Finally, the list in table 1, like the figure, is a sort of parallel piece of information that refers the reader out to another, to a figure or table that is going to fulfill the claim of describing the display block and what it does. Okay, great. So this is just a basic demonstration of how focus organization and following through on the claim create a coherent paragraph here. Okay, now let's look at the same paragraph and let's look at coherence from sentence to sentence. So one thing that you want to be aware of is where you are introducing new information and where you are connecting back to known or older information. Some different classes of what you might call known information are the commonly known, so common knowledge. You could expect your reader would know this because most people know this, or most of your readers are going to know this. There's previously introduced information, so this is key. This is something that you have already said in a previous sentence or section. And then there's also conventional knowledge, which is sort of similar to common knowledge, but it's basically that you can expect that your reader or your listener could put 2 and 2 together and understand that bit of information. Okay, so first let's go through and look at all of these bits of known information. The display is known information because it has been introduced in the previous section. We don't have that to reference, but you can go and look at the example. There's a link on our class website. But that's the topic of this block description document, right? The display block. So we're starting off with that. In the second sentence, we're connecting straight back to the same known information from the first sentence. So there's some more known information to start off with in the second sentence. Then in the second sentence, you've also got light patterns, and these light patterns were introduced back in the first sentence. So now those are also known. We know that they are important to the functioning of the display block. Okay. In the third sentence, figure 1 shows the black box diagram. Again, we're referring to the display, and you might also say this is conventional known information because your reader is going to be able to figure out where to look for that figure based on knowledge about what you're saying in the paragraph related to the other parts of the document. You're going to be able to look for that figure in the document. Again, starting off the sentence with the block, that's known information, and the lighting pattern. Repeating this known information to guide the reader through in a familiar way. Now this information about the output may have been known, may have been introduced in the block diagram. The output has probably been seen there, but that could also be considered common information or conventional information based on an audience of electrical engineers, right? And then finally, noting that this interface is a type of user output, so going back to that output, and interface properties can be found on table 1. So we have some more common knowledge that electrical engineers should recognize about the functioning of a piece of hardware, of a block. Okay, so now let's look at some of the new information that's introduced in the paragraph and how it's done, how it's connected to that known information. So in your very first sentence, notice you have the new information first, and that's a strategy that's called going from the known to the new. And that's the most common way of moving from sentence to sentence, almost like a chain link fence, by connecting first of all what's been introduced or what is known, and then finishing off with something that's new. Okay, so here we have that classic pattern. The display translates the digital signals, and then so this is how the block is functioning, and this is the main claim of the paragraph. Next, in the next sentence, again, we're starting off with something known, the display and production of light patterns. And then we've got some more information that this production must meet the need of a viewer user of not only the block, but the system as a whole. Okay, so this is a bit of new information that's connected in the same sentence with the known information. And that connection helps the reader or listener, in this case it's a reader, to comprehend or digest that new information because it fits into place nicely with what he or she already knows, is already aware of. The next sentence in this, the block is powered from the PS to display DC power interface. This bit about the interface is new. It hasn't been mentioned before. Again, we started off the sentence talking about the block, which related to the main claim, so it's connected. And then we're starting to talk about communications. In this case, communications start at the beginning of the sentence, but it's perhaps a bit conventional, so you can make that call whether you want to, it might also be a little bit repetitive to start off every sentence with the same words, the block, so it's been mixed up a little bit here, and that's a judgment call, and that's fine. So the communications, but then we go back straight away to talking about, okay, so this is for that lighting pattern that we already mentioned. And then we're mentioning the protocol that must happen, some new information. Finally, we have the properties focus on the user experience, not the physics of the emitted light, and that's the last new information that's given in the description of that block. All right, that's all the information I have for you. I hope this is helpful, and I hope that you'll bear this information in mind as you are engineering your papers, as you're engineering your paragraphs and flowing from sentence to sentence and being intentional in order to do it in a way that helps your readers to comprehend the information more easily and for it to be clearer. Thanks very much, and good luck on your writing and communications.